All right, good morning. So should I call you Captain Pettit or Dr. Pettit?
How about Karlene?
Karlene works as well. So,
That unusual name, yeah.
thanks for joining. And It's kind of early out here on the West Coast. Actually in Vegas. I'm looking at the other side of the Vegas Strip here, but thanks for joining in. And I caught one of your episodes. I forget the guy that was interviewing you, but it was a really cool interview. And I had, living in Atlanta, Delta Central. And just hearing your story so far. And so thanks for joining and getting into this. So, we just before we started recording, we talked about some of the differences because you were there obviously with Northwest before the merger and saw the changes. So, I remember who was the guy? Was it Richard Anderson that was at Delta at the time?
Yeah, Richard Anderson was our CEO just prior to the merger.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, he was a CEO prior to the bankruptcy. Then they brought Steenland in. Then we merged, and eventually he came back to
Yeah.
Delta. So.
But I remember hearing this third or fourth party that he was kind of instrumental because one of well, I don't think it's a hurdle. It's something that could have been overcome other ways, but he negotiated the Northwest flight attendants actually disbanding and, agreeing. And still to this day, Delta has not unionized the flight attendant fleet there. Do you remember any of that, hearing from the other side of the cockpit door, any of that?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I have never heard that Richard Anderson had anything to do with that at all. Delta's model is they don't want any, they do not want any union on the property, and they pay large sums of marketing money to keep unions off. The only union is the pilot union, but they don't care about ALPA because sadly they own ALPA. Anybody who in Alpha who works their way up, if they play ball with Delta and do all their little dirty deeds for them, they will get a nice management position on the Delta side of the house. I mean, even during one of the contract negotiations, it's ongoing, heavy handed. And one of the guys sitting at the table, he got up, left Alpa's side of the table, and went over, and Delta gave him a management position. It's kind of like you're playing poker, right? And you have the hand, and you see your cards, you set them on the table and walk around and tell the other guy. And that's what
Yeah.
happened. And that's what they do at Delta. So Delta does not want unions at all, and which is really unfortunate when you're in the safety industry because they can fire anyone for anything. Um, but you need to have a good union. And when you own the union like Delta does with Alpa, um, that doesn't work either. Okay. So you need to have some kind of protection. But the one thing that in my case, even though Alpa worked with Delta to help throw me off the property, what I did have was a union contract. And because I had that union contract, I was able to follow the steps and jump through the hoops and and make it work to my behalf. Okay. So even if your union's not helping you, if you got a contract, the law is the law, right? So they got to do it. So yeah, but it's really a shame that there was a big heavy-handed battle to keep the flight attendants off. And uh, yeah, they spend quite a bit of money on marketing to keep the new flight attendants, keep the group, and try and keep them. I don't know, in fear, and it's a lot of fear if they do. Anyone. And it's illegal. It's illegal if you try and form a union and they retaliate. So I don't know how many people know that, but yeah.
Well, I think I've seen the differences. You've got, I've done quite a bit of flying on Alaska and American this past year or two, and those you see it kind of sometimes with the quality of the crew. I think there was a statistic that was thrown out there that the average brand new Delta flight attendant hire, I think they're only staying a couple of years. And yet you kind of compare this to someone that is just are you really in for this? Are you just experiencing things that you're just not comfortable there? Is it the work hours, which I think any flight attendant is going to have the same, crazy schedule like you as a pilot did as well. But it just you see the quality difference, or I've seen it between some of the union shops and non-union shops.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, we were just talking about this the other day, is Delta's service is wonderful. Delta flight attendants, they give wonderful service. They can't have a bad day. They can't say anything wrong because they don't have a union to protect them. So it's kind of a catch-22. And my sister said, she says, yep. She goes, service over safety. She says, because dead passengers can't complain. And we're
Ooh.
kind of joking about this, but isn't that kind of ironic? Because we as passengers, we want good service, and we have these wonderful Delta flight attendants who are giving it to us, but it's not safe. And I remember a flight when we had just merged, and it was an international flight, and we had a weather delay, so we had to deviate and get fuel. Okay, and we way over extended duty time. Right. And so now we're on, and then we have to, when we finally get to destination, we don't have a gate. So we're busing, we have to offload 300 passengers. Okay. So bus load and one bus. Okay. So this is taken well into the night. By the time all the crew is on the crew van, oh my gosh, I want to say we're 18 hours into, maybe 19 hours into this day. Okay. And these poor flight attendants, the pilots were like, nope, you guys are done. You're not flying tomorrow. The flight attendants were on the manager. He's on the phone, the lead, and he's on the phone with dispatch and arguing that no, we can't turn around and go back out in 6 hours. This is crazy. We are exhausted. We can't do this. And what I was told by those flight attendants is they would go into the time of the computer, and they would move their times. They would move their report times to make the numbers work. And I was so physically, mentally exhausted after that day. I can only imagine what the flight attendants, because they're up on their feet and they're serving and they're dealing with all the people and getting them off the bus. They had far more taxing job than I did. And there was no way I was going to get up and go to work in 6 hours, 10 hours, or even 12 hours after that. It was a ridiculous day. And yeah. And so that's what happens when you don't have a contract, because then you're not protected for those type of safety issues. And that's unfortunate. Um, but yeah, service over safety. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. The one story that I wanted to tell, it was years ago. This was one of the wide bodies from Atlanta up to JFK. It was being relocated, and at some point, one of the flight attendants just came and popped out the little, aisle seat, and he just happened to sit next to me. And he was a former Northwest. I believe he still is or was based at Honolulu, because Northwest had that fleet or all of those routes that were trans-Pacific. And he just said, I miss my union. The conversation that I'm having with you right now, I could lose my job over it. And it just, why is it just this weird state of fear, paranoia? It's not good work morale. And I think that's leading to, the folks just like giving up, because there are a couple of bases for the flight attendants. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but the guarantee of the hours they're getting, that they get hired and they're given a letter to literally just go and apply for SNAP benefits and welfare basically, but yet they have an alleged full-time job. Yeah, the working conditions, I just, and even in the pilot side, you have these pilots coming out. If they're going to pilot school, what is it, 250 grand or so to get a pilot's license right now?
Well, no. You can go to what they call an FBO, and then you pay hourly rate and build your flight. But what you're thinking of is um, flight schools, like a university. So you're getting
Mhm.
college and you're getting a degree. And I don't know what it is now. I did look at it. Emory Riddle 4 years ago was 225.
Yeah.
So maybe. maybe higher than 250 right now. For the pilots, but then again, at those universities, the students, once they get 200 hours, they get to be the instructors. So then the 200-hour student is teaching the next student, and they're all teaching in this glass cockpit, or So the question is, what is really the quality of that pilot training? Their education's probably fabulous. It's a fabulous university, but the flight portion of these universities, students teaching students, we're seeing it on the other end when they're
Yeah.
coming into the airline. So,
It,
and not only that, I kind of smiled when you said about people being, this fear. Why fear? I'm going to tell you, our government manages by fear. Think of just the COVID vaccine. Okay, you're going to die if you don't get this vaccine. They got people reporting people, their neighbors, for going outside. How dare they go outside, and it was all because of fear. Delta's management concept is fear, based on fear. It's power, and that's how we control people.
gotcha.
And yeah, and when I first came forward, when I first saw what I was doing, because it was the merger, and over at Northwest, we treated our students, our pilots coming in, they were our customers. That's what I was told at Northwest when I became an instructor, and I became an instructor while still on probation as a new hire because I had so much experience teaching and flying at so many different airlines, and they said, your student is your customer. You give them everything you can, and we did. And we went, if a student was having a problem, we'd go sit in the briefing room or go have lunch and go through it and really work to ensure they understood what they were doing, that they had a full understanding. It wasn't just memory. And so then when we merged with Delta, and there's no ground school, there's no class, they just give the answers to the test and say, memorize this, go push the button. In training, a 747 captain is on a 330, and he's asking questions because it's a totally different concept,
Mhm.
and he came from old school where we had to understand how the hydraulics worked and the electrics worked. So when something broke, we could manage the aircraft. And so he's asking questions, and the instructor told him to be the monkey, push the button, and get the banana. Stop asking questions, or you'll never make it through training. And so these were and here's a good one on the new hire class. Don't ever call in fatigued. Fatigue is the other F word. It's better to call in drunk, and I raise my hand and go, wait a minute. It's better calling drunk at 4 a.m, and kind of got the glare and stuff. So these are the things when we merge, it's a total different attitude, total different company. Also, don't tell us anything we don't already know. You can't tell us anything. We already know it. So don't even say anything. Stop uh, stop giving letters and drink more beer. Okay. These are the things that were coming. And so that's why I thought, this is weird, and it can't be safe. So I went to school to get my PhD in aviation safety. And I put together this report, an 8-year ethnographic study over what was going on, what I saw at Delta, based on my doctoral research, and what I saw, and most of it was just it's a culture clash, but I was able to go from one culture to the next, and it was just glaring. I guess if you're a frog and you get put in the pot and you slowly start boiling in the pot, you don't know there's something wrong. But I was thrown into that pot of boiling water, and I'm like, this is wrong. And before I did anything, I go back to school to get the PhD. So, but the fear part of it is everyone, union, pilots, they said, do not report. You're going to lose your career, And one of my girlfriends, she said, um, maybe you're kicking the hornet's nest. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? I wonder who actually is kicking. And this was after they already done it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stand up to you guys. And she says, and I thought, well, maybe they're the one that's kicking the hornet's nest, not me. But it was all based on fear. Everyone was saying, don't do it. They're going to get you. And it was, people were afraid to come forward. They would talk to me on the side. I would hear stories. I still hear stories. People from Delta call me all the time of what's going on. And but they can't say anything themselves. They're afraid. It's all fear-based. And so everyone's like, don't do it, don't do it, do it, do it. And the bottom line, it finally came to it. I told my husband, I said, we could lose everything. And he says, he goes, I don't need anything but you. We have each other. And I said, I don't think I could live with myself if we had an accident and I didn't say something. And so that was really my driving force, because I thought, you know what, take my career, beat me up, but I don't want to have the knowledge and have a plane crash and not have said something.
Mhm.
And I was naive too. I was pretty naive because I thought the guys in the ivory tower didn't know what was going on. Oh, they all knew what was going on. And it was a for-profit business decision.
Mhm.
So therein lies the battle. They had to silence me, and I don't want people to die.
Yeah.
And then we
And
have that, yeah.
as you're going through some of that, I'm only wondering, Northwest traditionally was based up in Detroit and Minneapolis. Is there any, because this goes back to my grandmother. She's a Southern, good Southern Christian woman, and she would say things like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. Do you feel, looking back over the changes that you saw, that this Southern culture, possibly at all, has any bearing on any of this, or is it just because it's geographical difference?
You know what? That's a really interesting point because yeah, geography. You can tell the different personalities when you're flying with the Alaska crew or the New York crew or the LA crew, right? Or
Hmm.
or the South crew. I think the culture of Delta, there's a little bit there because Delta tried to turn my safety complaint into a gender discrimination thing, but I have no doubt that they did this in the manner in which they did it because I was a woman, because it's the good old Southern Belle down there. They were really behind the times. A friend of mine at Northwest received a letter that said, uh, thank you for your application, but we don't hire women as pilots. Okay. My girlfriend, the only reason I became a pilot is because my girlfriend at 9 years old says, you can't be a pilot. Girls can't do that. Yes, they can. No, they can't. My
Hmm.
dad's a pilot and he says they can. Well, guess what? Retired as a Delta captain. So it's an attitude of back in the day. I mean, I'm watching a movie. Oh, I wish I could remember the name, but it was where this character, this attorney, is defending this young little black girl gets raped by these white guys, and all the stuff that's going on in the South. And I'm going, boy, how is that even possible? Back in the day, and I'm looking at, I'm going, wait a minute, that was in the 70s. What?
Yeah.
So they're behind the times down there, number one, and number two, they're military, and they run it like the military. You know what? Do not challenge an order. Do not say anything, and they act as if we're in war. And if you challenge one of the commanders, you're going to be court-martialed. But reality is, we're not in war. An entire safety system says, see something, say something. That's how we learn. We got to speak out. So while they profess we have a reporting culture, they really don't. And what interesting thing is, I don't even think they understand what a reporting culture is, because Captain James Graham, he was a VP at the time when I reported. Then they promoted him to senior VP during trial. Then they promoted him to the CEO of Endeavor. Now, we all saw what happened with Endeavor in Toronto crashing. Okay. There may have been some things, if Jim Graham actually read that report I handed to him 9 years earlier, that accident might not have happened, but we won't even go there. But Jim Graham in trial, he said, as reference to a reporting culture, we've had 25,000 ASAP reports in 2018. Now, his ASAP report is a safety report. It's designed, came in well before reporting culture of safety management systems. And it's where we as pilots, if we make an error, we self-disclose it and say, hey, I missed that radio call because I was distracted with the flashing light in my cockpit, something stupid. But we say, here's the problem. And so the intent of the ASAP system, we report on ourselves and then we can improve. Okay. And the FAA says, hey, we like that. We're not going to violate pilots for doing anything wrong as long as it's not negligent. And you guys report it, you find the solution, you fix it. Okay. That's the ASAP system. So Jim Graham is in court testifying that we have the most robust reporting culture because we've had 25,000 ASAP reports. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is the senior VP of Delta bragging they've had 25,000 errors or one error 25,000 times or any combination thereof. And he's thinking that's a reporting culture. And no, that's a 25,000 ASAP reports is a safety issue. And the reporting culture is when we as in pilots see something going on externally, like Jim Graham, you're forcing pilots on to exceed their duty time. I'm going to report that. That's the reporting culture. That's not where you write an ASAP report. That's where they retaliate against you. So even somebody at the very highest level doesn't understand, and he's in court testifying to this, which I found really perplexing because that's another difference at Northwest. All the pilot managers, oh my gosh, any director, you were not a director. You were not moved up the chain until you had your 30,000 hours of experience and actually knew what you were doing. They just didn't give friends jobs over there. You had to have a breadth of knowledge. You would never become a fleet captain on an international wide body fleet unless you yourself had international wide body experience. When we moved over to Delta, the guy who became the fleet captain over the 330, 777, 767 was a DC-9 captain. He had never flown international. And now he's the fleet manager. He ended up getting typed on the 330 and ended up ultimately flying it. But how do you do that job if you don't know the job, right? So,
That's a very good point. I remember a former company that I worked at, and I asked those questions because I never felt comfortable as I've managed people in the past. I never felt comfortable asking someone to do something that I had not done myself, and then being their manager. And you go to this company and you've got managers that are younger than me, and a situation comes up and they're like like a deer in headlights. That they either just don't respond, or they just come up with this knee-jerk reaction that doesn't have a lot of experience behind it. Yeah, it's concerning, and like you just said, a DC-9 pilot. It just, yeah, I I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but these are definitely points to ponder. And so there, to bring it up to kind of current news, the 777 fleet that Delta decided to get rid of, and then now you've got all the Airbuses that don't have the same range. You've got the impacts there of, okay, maybe we don't take some non-res to save some weight or something like that. But now full circle, you've got, oh, well, maybe Delta is going to get some 787s now because they're seeing the range issues and the decisions that they made, and they want to fly these longer flights, and you can't do that sustainably when some of the Airbuses just don't have the range when they're fully loaded. So we'll see. Bastion, I also wanted to question because I think we had emailed back and forth about his recent little media tour, and the darling of Wall Street, and Delta is making all these profits and everything. But are they really? Because they outsource so many different parts of the organization. Do they really know what's going on, or are they literally every day just pun intended flying by the seat of their pants?
yeah, I'm smart that I view Ed Bastian as a chorus girl. Have you ever? I used to go to the hydroplane races, okay, and they had the chorus girls at the booth in their little bikinis, and they're standing around. And the minute the camera came out, chest out, smile on, and look at me. And every time I see him on a camera, that's what I picture him as a chorus girl. Where's the substance behind before you get on the camera, right? I actually really respected uh, Ed Bastian, when we first got there, he helped me out get some tickets for a teacher to take some orphans to Rome. It wasn't a marketing ploy. Um, I really thought he was a whistleblower himself. He undercovered fraud as an accountant. He's an accountant. He kind of covered fraud, and they moved him up. But the fact with my case, he knew me and he knew what they were doing, and he allowed it to happen.
Mhm.
And when we deposed him, I asked him, my attorney asked him, but we had the numerous questions and said, "Did you know that they paid a doctor 74,000?" Put the letter in front of him. He looks at it. No. Did you, or I can't recall. I can't recall is the thing. We put in that they premeditate. We put everything in front of him. And I thought, up until that point, I'm thinking, please, God, make him just be naive and not really know what's going on, because I want to believe in this man. I want to know that he's a man of integrity and honesty. And the whole time I was hoping that he may not have known. And if he didn't know, after we deposed him, he did know. Okay, right? So we gave him everything about the setups and the strategy and the payments. And I thought, for sure, after he understands this, he's going to walk out of there and he's going to make change. And he's going to say, "You guys can't do this." And he's going to remove Jim Graham and he's going to say, "We're done with this. Okay, let's just end it." And he did not. He allowed it to go forward. And was that from advice of others? Because, like you said, I'm just running amok. People are running. I'm just here as the head. Now, was he really culpable of what he did to me, or was he behaving in that same manner in this case? And if he was behaving that same manner in this case, I'm assured he's behaving that same manner running the company. Because if he can't take charge of something such as that was so um, they pay money for marketing. What a horrible marketing tool this was. If he can't understand this and can't understand safety and right and wrong, either he's a puppet by somebody we don't know who, or he doesn't have the aptitude and ability to understand this. So now let's put him over and is running a company. Either he's a puppet or he does not have the aptitude and ability to run this company. And yet they all vote each other in the best CEO. Did you see that they just lost $8 million? They were fined $8 million for COVID fraud relief fund. Where did that money go? Who has that money? This is, if you look at Delta Airlines, there's so many lawsuits out there, and most of the stuff they pay. Why don't the stockholders know? Because they hide this stuff. The doctor, this is actually kind of funny, is I didn't know. I'm going, how can the stockholders not know that Delta pays doctors to go after uh, employees? To me, that's not an expense, right? It's not an expense of running an airline, and I know they're writing it off.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, because this, I'm not the first time they've done this to, right? And so they pay these doctors, and I'm thinking, and it's not an expensive business. They got to be writing it off because it's not on the books anywhere. Where in the heck is this going? I found out in trial, they call the doctors that they pay vendors. It's a vendor payment. Like if it were buying the peanuts or the olives for the first class passenger, they make these doctors vendors so they can rightfully make it an expense and write it off. I'm going to say that's fraud. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it's tax fraud. But Delta's not behind it, but they spend so much money on marketing. It shows you the power of marketing.
Yeah.
It really does, because they are the elite airline, and Bastion's this elite CEO, and it's all a marketing. Um, if you want to have some fun, go back and look at the photos of Ed Bastian when we first merged. Okay, look what he's wearing, look at his glasses, look at his hair, look at his stance. And now somebody put him in a fancy suit and nice glasses and fixed his hair, and he just blossomed. And if you put the two videos side by side, they are two different people.
Well,
So,
that's a funny analogy with the chorus girl. That's quite it. Uh,
You're never gonna lose that out of your mind again, are you?
no, that's
Yeah.
and so there is an opinion that I heard that he may be out by the end of this year, and but who? Okay, the person you know versus the replacement. So who would be the new leader there? We'll have to see if that actually happens. So
You know who I think it's going to be? I
mm,
think it's going to be Janky,
mm,
Chief Financial Officer. Um, I think they were bringing him in, grooming him for this. And I have to tell you, I wrote him numerous emails before Janky came on board at Delta. Rumor was he was coming over, and I'm in the heat of battle, and I thought, wonder if he's a good guy, bad guy. And I shouldn't say good guy, bad guy. I should say good guy, ethical guy, or it's all about the money. Okay. And because people can be all about the money, it doesn't make them bad if they do it in the right way. And, so money's not the necessary evil. It's just if you forsake everything else for that money. But so I connected with Janky to see if he would connect with me on LinkedIn, because you can't write private messages unless they accept you, right? So I sent a message and said, I understand you're coming to Delta. I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't have it in front of me, but I understand you're coming to Delta. We really need your leadership. We're wasting funds in so many different areas. And because what I decided to do is show him not only everything Delta did in my case, that I'm promoting safety, not only safety, a huge, detriment to the balance sheet, but that's costing them all this money in these areas. Okay. Because they could fix it and actually save money. And he connected with me and he welcomed all my emails, but he never responded. He never said anything. So I gave him the trial documents and the falsification records. I gave him duty time violations. I gave him all the emails that I've been, going back and forth with all the executives of what really is going on at this company. But so, yeah, so I found it interesting. It was, yeah, I want to hear what's going on, but I'm not going to put my neck out to exchange a dialogue with you. But he did, he had to do the physical act to say, yeah, open
yeah,
it up, send me everything.
I
And I
guess
did.
at
So
least he
it'll be
listened. Yeah,
interesting. Well, we'll see. At least he knew what he was getting into and what they were doing. So I thought it was going to be John Lauder,
mm,
because years ago, because it was shortly after I retired. Well, no, actually, it was shortly before I retired. He was the face of Delta. He was going on, they had moved him. He was an old Northwest guy, absolute ethical, honest, salt of the earth guy, very smart man. And they were moving him from different departments. I think he did a tour in the flight attendant management, cargo, he's going, get moved around. So he's learning the company. Then he became the face of Delta on the welcome video. And when I saw him pop up there, I go, yep, they're going to make him the CEO. They're getting the public used to him. And then all of a sudden, in the heat of my issue, during that time frame, he left. And nobody knew why he left. And then Ed Bastian's video is back on welcoming the passengers. So I always hoped, and I may just reach out to ask him, because I always wondered, there were so many high level executives, attorneys, everyone in this uh,
machine
situation
almost.
against me, right? And so many people. We're talking, when you see it, when I come out with a memoir, you can read this and we'll have another talk. How many dozens of people were emailing and conspiring to try and make this work? Okay. I always wondered who in the company said, no, you guys can't do this. We shouldn't be doing this. If I were in a management spot and this was coming across my desk, I would say, what the heck? What do you guys think you are doing? This is no, we're not doing this. Okay. So I always hoped, and one day I will ask, and maybe I will find out or I won't. But I always wondered if John Lauder said, no, we shouldn't be doing this. I'm not going to partake. And I'm not gonna fight you, and I'm not gonna rat you out. I'm not gonna say anything, but I won't be part of it. I'm just gonna leave.
Gotcha.
Because if you look at our uh, in the government, how many government positions or people are leaving, they're just, they're like, yeah, it's not me. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to walk away. It's wrong. It's wrong what's happening in my little world, but it's not worth the fight. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
And I always wondered if he did that. So yeah, but I do think it's going to be Janky is going to be the next guy.
Hmm. Well, we'll certainly document this on July 2025 and see what happens. So we
Exactly.
actually are leading up to a little break here. So I'm going to actually stop the recording and
Okay.